Hi there, it's Elaine Hamilton from the Reiki Center. Today's chit chat is about thoughts and being right. So, the thinking process itself is not really an issue. It's the holding on to an attachment to it as an opinion, and then holding that opinion as how do you say it? It's like getting confused. So ultimately, I think many of us get really, really confused around who we are. And although when I say this, you'd be like, yeah, I know that. Well, some of you met a lovely lady. And when I said this, she was like, I didn't know that. But you are not your thoughts. And I think for the majority of you watching this, you'd be like, yeah, I know that. I'm not my thoughts. So, for example, you realize that you're not your opinions, but there's a part of you that doesn't realize that. So when your opinions get challenged, you will become very defensive. And the reason behind that is because if you were wrong about your opinion, then you are wrong as an existence. And that's simply the confusion around your thinking or your thought patterns or your belief systems and you as a existence of an awareness or presence. And so in a sense, when you get offended because, or you get defensive because somebody is dismissing your opinions or not believing your opinions or, whatever, not doing what you think they should be doing, or you're not doing what you think you should be doing, all of these kinds of things, in a sense, it is the death of the thought. So in a purest sense, something does die when you stop believing in it or when you stop defending it. So a very, very simple example, okay? Because this tends to resonate with a lot of people. If you're driving and somebody cuts you up, so they drive dangerously in front of you, causing you to brake or causing you to kind of have a bit of a shock, it is a very natural reaction to feel anger. And that anger is because your boundaries have been kind of violated and you have been put in danger. So that's a very natural anger. But then what we do is we put on top of that, they shouldn't have done that. And that propagates the anger or irritation. And sometimes we can even go so far as to then start driving dangerously, start honking them, start flashing them, start, all that kind of thing, which then puts us as the dangerous driver. Now, in the purest sense, if somebody cuts up in front of you, causing you to brake, causing you to have a bit of a shock, then that energetic anger that comes up is healthy anger because it's keeping you safe. And then as soon as you're safe, then it's gone. It's like, okay, and off you carry on. You don't have to continue projecting your displeasure on the driver. The displeasure and that belief that you are right and they are wrong, they shouldn't have done that, and you're sitting there feeling righteous and angry and irritated and all the rest of it. If you don't believe that, like if you just let that go so that it's just gone, then that thought, I'm right, he's wrong, he shouldn't have done that, she shouldn't have done that, they put me in danger, whatever your thought patterns are around that actually does die, right? Because it might come up and then you just let it go. It's like, doesn't matter. My peace is more important than my righteousness, or my peace is more important than this thought. So the thought itself does die. So there is this confusion that many of us have that our thoughts are us, which is why we get so defensive. And it's a simple misunderstanding of what we are and what we're made of. And so for many of us, when we have a lot of belief structures, belief systems, particularly if you're involved in quite strong schools of thought, like let's say you're very religious, or you have certain opinions about certain things, or that kind of thing. You can really see it there, where people get incredibly defensive when you poke, or when you tell them they're not being logical, or when you disagree with them in any way at all. Some people get super, super, super identified with their thinking and honestly believe that for them to let go of their beliefs, they would actually die. Now, of course, when you point that out to them, they'll be like, no, I don't think that at all. But underlying, there is this misunderstanding of what thinking is and who they are. So part of the process of really coming into your own center is this process of starting to re-identify with who you are, right? So often when we do our Reiki, excuse me, we'll notice that we feel a lot more calmer, and we're much less attached to our thinking. It's like if someone cuts us up, we're chill. It's like, okay, whatever. Because we understand that in order to let that thought go, it doesn't change who we are in the slightest. We're not disturbed by our thinking, and we're not disturbed by not having thinking. It's like, okay, comes and goes, comes and goes. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not opinionated. I mean, those of you who know me know I'm very opinionated. I have lots of opinions. I like having opinions. Like, it's kind of fun, right? To rant and to say this is wrong and this is right. But I'm not confused by the fact that I could be wrong or I could be right, or it's just an opinion. Like, it has no bearing on who I am at all. Whether I believe this or believe that. So you'll also notice as you go through my videos, if you go way back, I have lots of different opinions, and I've changed my mind lots of times. In the beginning, I thought vaccinations were really, this is very controversial, but I'll say it anyway. I was like, yeah, get the vaccination, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm looking at all this information and I'm like, shit, man, shouldn't have got that vaccination. It's not good. Because there's new information out there. That's the way I look at it. And my Reiki journey, the same. It's like, as I've gone through my Reiki journey, for those who've known me for many years, my opinions about Reiki and my opinions about attunements, my opinions about the symbols, my opinions about the rituals, everything has changed completely because I'm not my opinions. And as a teacher, I think it's part of my duty to be constantly updating the way that I teach as I grow and change my opinions. And one of the things that's really important, and we always say this about Reiki, is Reiki in and of itself doesn't have a philosophy, doesn't have an opinion. It's universal life force. So anything that you are holding now, please feel free to let it go, change your mind, think something different, because all of these things do not contain you. When I was growing up, I was hugely religious because it gave me something, and I enjoyed it. And then I wasn't. Then I was stoically atheist. Not for long. That didn't last long. That was too difficult for me. But I was stoically atheist, like it's just chemistry. And then I moved into spirituality, and through spirituality, I've also changed my mind many, many times about things. And I get really involved in things. I'm like, oh, this is true. Law of attraction. Wow, this is great. It's like, it's part of the fun of living, right? Is to experiment, go down all these little alleyways. How does it feel? What's it like to put this clothing on and that clothing on? But don't get confused with that identity that you've put on or tried, or the opinion that you've put on and tried as being you. Because what that means is that you have to get defensive. Because if someone comes and goes, oh, what you're talking about is absolute bullshit, then you're like, whoa, because essentially what they're doing is they're saying you're bullshit if you believe that you are your opinions and you are your thoughts and you are, I am that person who is going to get mad if someone cuts me up because they shouldn't have done that. What that also means is you will never find consistent peace, because for every single opinion you have, somebody's got the opposite opinion. That's life. So if you are heavily defended in your opinions, then you are constantly at war, constantly, because there's always going to be somebody on social media, or you're going to turn on the news, or somebody's going to say something and you're going to get all irate and you're going to be out of your peace, you're going to be out of your center because you feel like you have to defend yourself. So it's really, it's such a key to lasting peace, is to be able to really see that your opinions, your beliefs, your thoughts, no matter what they are, doesn't matter what they are, whatever opinion you hold is not the truth. Your opinion is simply one end of a thought paradigm. And along that paradigm, there are lots of other people believing lots of other things. And none of it identifies who you are. What you are is something beyond thought. It's beyond experience. You're not able to put a label on it, right? And you can feel into that yourself. Like, just because I changed my opinion and I went from a Christian to an atheist didn't change who I was at all. Like, none of it. And think about that in your life. Like, when you changed your mind about things, it didn't make you less of a person or more of a person. You were the same person, just putting on a different costume. So these costumes that we put on, they can be changed. And when you have that kind of freedom and openness, one, it gives you so much less defensiveness, because when people come and they're like, you're wrong, you're like, yeah, you're probably right. Probably. Like, whatever, I don't care. This is what I believe at the moment. You can believe your thing. I believe my thing. It's not a big deal. There's no need to get agitated. So it gives you a huge amount of strength and self-empowerment, because other people can't come and knock you off your center, because you're not off your center. You're playing at one end or the other end. Maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. You know, it's like no big deal. It also provides you with an enormous amount of openness, so that you can have really interesting discussions with people. And when they have opposite viewpoints, you can kind of find it fascinating. Like, you want to go there, you want to experience what it might be like coming from their viewpoint. And you can do that. You can really do that in many, many different ways. Like, you look at all the wars going on at the moment, there is so much polarity. You look at the pandemic and the right-wing, left-wing opinion. You look at politics in the US. You know, you look at anything and you can find the divergent viewpoints. And so all of that is just play. And I know some of it feels really serious, but it is ultimately all just play. It's just consciousness, beliefs, structures, rising and falling. And they change so much. Like, you think about how much your opinions must have changed over the last couple of years as different information comes in, as you listen to different people, as the world evolves. It's like we're constantly reevaluating what we think. And if we think that's attached to us as an essence, then that's going to create an enormous amount of instability, because we're constantly like, oh, where do I stand? Where do I stand? Don't stand anywhere. Like, be everything. Because if you can be everything, then it really doesn't matter. You can land temporarily somewhere and go, oh, okay, well, this feels interesting. I'm going to explore this ideology for a while. No biggie. And then when that no longer suits you, you can move into the next thing that piques your interest. But it becomes much more around curiosity, around growth, around exploration, and much less about trying to land a certainty of opinion. That's never going to happen. So being able to move through life with a fluidity and an openness and a relaxed state of curiosity, then your center is really very undisturbed, because you just know all of it is ultimately bullshit. And it's like, okay, it's kind of fun, but you know who you are. And you are just this essence of presence that is just constantly moving and exploring and enjoying. And if you can get the hang of that, then there's a huge amount of freedom in that. And then you're just on the lookout, right? The more that happens, the other thing that happens is that the more that happens, the less you have to try and hold on to your beliefs and prove your beliefs. So actually, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but the more open you are to all the ideas, the less ideas bother you, or the less busy your mind is. Which sounds weird because you're like, well, I have a really strong opinion on this, so that should just be stable. But no, because if you have a really strong opinion about something, then you're going to be continually having to defend it. So there's lots of other beliefs that will be armoring that central belief. All of these reasons why you're right. All of these reasons why that person's wrong. All of these reasons, blah, 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 blah. Whereas if you're really, really open to maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's the other, who cares? There's a lot more peace and quiet in your mind because you're not having to defend a position and you're not having to find evidence to prove this is right or that is right. So ultimately, the more open you are, the quieter it is in there as well, which is a great added bonus. And then when ideas do pique your interest, you can focus, you can have a look, you can explore. And then when you kind of think, oh, I'm done with that, then you pull back and you wait for the next interest to come in. It's just a lot easier. So I'm kind of rambling off on different directions, but hopefully it just gives you a bit of food for thought. And I say this because often, and particularly at the moment, there's so much polarization, and maybe it's just we're more aware of it now because of social media, and you can follow your own independent news channels of choice, and there's a lot of options now. So maybe it's always been like this, but right now we're able to get a lot of different opinions, and we can curate and choose what we watch, right, and what we follow. So maybe that's why it's a bit more in our face at the moment, but it can be very useful to help navigate, particularly when you're feeling overwhelmed. There seems to be an awful lot of conflict at the moment. And oftentimes when you can just drop under all of that conflict and not need to have a position, just relax. It's fine. You don't need to have a position. If you need to have a position, then you'll need to have a position, but you don't have to get, what do I think? And what does this and that? It's very tight. So allow that openness, because ultimately all opinions have a certain truth to them and a certain untruth. None of them are ultimately correct. And so just allowing that to let go, just let go, relax. It's okay, will hopefully help to bring a little bit more peace. So when you notice that you're getting very defensive, very uptight, just question, am I getting confused? Am I thinking that I am this belief, that I am this position that I've taken? And have I forgotten that I am so much more and so much more peaceful than that? So hope that helps. See you next time.